Patch 4.2 in Genshin Impact will introduce the long-awaited Hydro Archon Furina, the 4-star cryo healer Charlotte, and have several anticipated reruns people have been waiting a while for. And while some people know exactly who they want to wish for, a lot of people are having trouble deciding. That's why in this video we'll go over Furina, Baizhu, Cyno, and Ayato's strengths, weaknesses, team viability, and overall value. That way you'll know if one of these upcoming 5 stars is worth your primogems. After I break down each character, I will tell you who is the best value for your primogems and give a proven strategy that will help you get characters you really want in the future. Each of the 5 stars on this list will receive a rating from bad to great in several categories, including personal damage, support capability, team flexibility, and free-to-play friendliness. I'll also recommend characters that would make good teammates for these 5 stars, since you often need specific characters to really unlock the potential of a limited 5-star character. But as always, if you know who you really want already, then go ahead and wish for them. This is a guide to help clarify what the 4.2 limited 5 stars can do well and what they struggle with, so that way you'll be prepared to solve any problems that arise as you play them. And just know that Furina is a new 5-star, so we'll need to test her to fully understand how good she is, but based on the info we have, we can still give her a proper evaluation. With that being said, let's begin the grading with the personality-shifting god of water and justice, who's basically just what happens if you make Fischl the queen of everything, Furina. Furina is a support character that is capable of dealing damage off-field, healing your on-field character, and buffing your team's damage. She can also switch between Numa and Uja alignments at will, making her really handy for all the puzzles in Fontaine and for fighting those pesky Gardamex. This all probably sounds pretty good so far, but she also drains your entire team's health. Doing so will make her elemental skill, her little watery friends that she summons, deal more damage, and also give her stacks of fanfare. Furina's fanfare mechanic is how she buffs the team. Whenever a character on the team loses or gains HP, the percentage they lose or gain is turned into a fanfare stack. And the more fanfare stacks you have, the more your damage bonus becomes when she uses her elemental burst. This damage bonus will definitely be significant, but don't expect her to double everyone's damage unless you're running some very specific setups. Archons have historically been some brokenly strong characters, but Furina will be a bit different. She will be very strong, but don't expect her to be like Xingqiu or Yelan. By that, I mean don't expect her to do massive damage and also apply massive amounts of hydro for elemental reactions. From the 4.2 livestream, we can see her particle generation is quite bad, and unless her pets apply hydro every single hit with no internal cooldown, her hydro application is also quite bad. Instead, she is going to be a very strong buffing character that has consistent off-field damage, enables a lot of new teams, and revitalizes characters that have fallen from grace. Because of the way her fanfare team buff works, don't be surprised if Jean or Barbara become widely used teammates for Furina. So how good is Furina? Is the god of justice a righteous use of your primogems, or is she irredeemable? While she still has to stand trial, we can give her a solid rating. Furina's personal damage is good to great. Her personal damage is very solid and it's based on her max HP, so she can deal sizable amounts of damage while also being fairly tanky. She is likely not going to be a very good hyper carry or on-field damage dealer, at least at Constellation 0, but her summons work when she's not the active character, and they do pretty much all of her damage anyway. Just know that these pets will also drain your entire team's health so that they can do more damage with their little hydro attacks. This makes full party healers like Jean, Barbara, Baizhu, and so forth really valuable in order to keep your team's HP topped off and Furina's personal damage high. Furina's support capability is great, with some caveats. She's not going to have great particle generation, her hydro application isn't going to be nearly as good as Xingqiu or Yelan, and she will actually hurt your characters so she can deal more damage. But in doing so, she will end up buffing your team's damage the more their HP yo-yos up and down. And just know that she will have fairly high energy recharge requirements, and if you can't use her burst, you won't be able to take advantage of her fanfare stacks to buff your team and increase their damage. She will also give you a constant source of off-field damage and can provide healing in a pinch, but her healing only works for the active character, in other words the character that's on the field, and not the other ones. This will be quite nice in the overworld, but it will be a lot harder to manage in more difficult content like the upper floors of the Abyss. Furina's team flexibility is great! Furina will be a great character for a lot of teams despite the fact that she kind of kills everyone on your team. One of the most asked questions I get is, will she be good with Hu Tao? And the answer is yes, but not in the way people are used to. I want everyone to know that she is not a replacement for Xingqiu or Yelan, but can supplement those characters on a Hu Tao team. This is mostly due to the fact that her Hydro application is not very good, but what is really exciting about Furina is that she can enable a lot of teams and playstyles that are very different from the typical teams we have now. For example, Jean and Barbara are not widely used characters in a lot of difficult content, but they may have a place with Furina's teams. Furina can actually be a really good support for a Noelle carry team because Furina can drain the team's HP and Noelle can then heal them back up while also dealing damage. So it's looking like she can enable a lot of previously loved but seldom used characters, and I think that's really cool. She's also going to be really good with Fontainian characters because their archetype is draining their own health and then restoring it back, which makes it really easy to gain stacks of fanfare. In particular, she will be an incredible partner for Neuvillette. So what you should know about Furina is that she has a ton of team flexibility, but it's not because she's a great off-field pyro applicator or energy generator. Those aspects of her seem to be quite bad actually, but she is a very strong choice that can increase your team's damage while also enabling less used characters to once again enjoy the spotlight. Furina's free-to-play friendliness is good to great. One of her best weapons, the Festering Desire, is an old event weapon that you can't get anymore if you don't already have it. But she has another very nice free-to-play option in the Ferryman of Fleuve Sand, even though the pipe sword looks quite inelegant on her. She works in a variety of teams, and even makes it so a character like Barbara could be a desirable teammate, because she works with a variety of 5-star and 4-star characters, and she has a good free-to-play weapon. She will also be quite the free-to-play friendly character that will only increase in value as you obtain more characters. Furina's overall rating is good to great. I really wanted to say that she will just be flat out great, but the truth is that she will take some getting used to. She is not the typical Hydro character, instead it's more like she's a team buffer and off-field damage dealer that just so happens to be blue. She will enable a lot of teams that aren't really used. She doesn't need supports like Bennett. She's got a good free-to-play weapon, but you should absolutely see if you like her playstyle before wishing for her. If you don't like how she drains everyone's health for more damage, then you won't like playing her no matter how good she is, because she will be doing that at every opportunity she gets. Recommended potential teammates for Furina include Neuvillette, Jean, Barbara, Charlotte, Baizhu, Xingqiu, Yelan, Nahida, Fischl, Noelle, Hu Tao, and just about any other team where you want more than one Hydro character and already have a team-wide healer. The next 5-star on the list is the good doctor who treats people's maladies even at the cost of his own health, Baizhu. Baizhu is a Dendro Catalyst user and healer. His skill sends out a serpentine spirit that hits enemies before returning to heal your whole team. His burst puts up a very weak shield that is meant to break, because when it does, it heals you, and then it refreshes a few seconds later, while every once in a while dealing Dendro damage to enemies close to you. Baiju's skill heals a ton, and while his burst provides a shield that is pretty much only good for blocking one hit until it refreshes, so enemies that are super aggressive or attack multiple times over a few seconds can easily knock you around. Baizhu was always a pretty decent character, but he was often overshadowed by Yao Yao, a 4-star Dendro healer that is nearly as good as he is. But now that Furina is joining the cast, Baizhu is going to become a lot more valuable. So how does the sickly doctor fare these days? It's time to give Baizhu a rating. Baizhu's personal damage is bad. He has low range and low AoE potential, especially for a catalyst character. His damage scales off of attack, but his heals scale off of HP, and his multipliers aren't high enough to justify building him to totally deal damage and sacrificing his healing capability. Baizhu's support capability is great! His healing is amazing and will be more useful with characters like Furina. His burst gives a little bit of interruption resistance as well, and while it's far from a perfect shield, it is plenty as long as you know when you have to dodge, unlike me who just face tanks everything. His passive talent also buffs Dendro reaction damage when he heals you, and while this is not a massive damage boost, it is still nice. Baizhu can further support the team with a Prototype Amber for more healing, a Favonius Codex for team energy, or a Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers to massively buff one character's attack, but normally you'll just stick to either the Prototype Amber or the Favonius Codex. Baizhu's team flexibility is great! As a Dendro character, Baizhu is welcome in a ton of different really powerful teams. Nilou Bloom teams, Aggravate or Spread teams, and Hyper Bloom teams all really appreciate Baizhu. Just note though that he is not great as a solo Dendro character like Nahida is, because his skill and burst don't apply enough Dendro consistently when he's alone, and you also don't get to use his skill that often in your rotations. But when paired with the Dendro Traveler and especially Nahida, his weaknesses become much less apparent. Baizhu can have very high energy recharge requirements, especially if he is the only Dendro character on a team, and we're talking upwards of 250% energy recharge or more in some cases. But you can solve these problems by using a second Dendro character in a team or giving him a Favonius Codex or High Refinement Prototype Amber, and if you do that, you can splash him into a lot of teams and make them feel super comfy. Baizhu's free-to-play friendliness is great, the Prototype Amber and Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers being easily accessible weapons for him, as well as many different team comps he can be in allow Baizhu to be a great free-to-play option for a ton of different players. But his damage capability is quite low, and he's not going to feel great for people who struggle to defeat enemies. But damage-dealing characters are quite common, and good healing characters are not, meaning that Baizhu can be valuable for those who want him for quite a long time. As long as people don't expect great damage and Dendro application from him, they'll find his medicine is anything but bitter. Baizhu's overall rating is good. Previously, I would have said he's just okay, but with Furina coming into the fold, he's suddenly going to be a lot more in demand. He has ratings of great in several categories, but it's still hard to fully endorse Baizhu. He's always been a valuable character, but Yao Yao was often more than necessary for people who wanted a Dendro healer. Now Baizhu has become a character that has a lot more to offer, especially in teams with Furina, as his skill healing the whole team will charge Furina's fanfare stacks faster, and he's still just as valuable in the same teams as he always used to be, even if Yao Yao can often be a good substitute for him. I would personally recommend trying to get Yao Yao instead of Baizhu if you want a Dendro healer, especially because you can get Yao Yao for free during Genshin Impact's Lantern Rite celebration, which this year should be in patch 4.4. But Baizhu is still a solid choice, and there's nothing wrong with wishing for him if you want him. Recommended teammates for Baizhu include Cyno, Ayato, Nilou, Furina, Spread, Aggravate, or Hyper Bloom teams, and pretty much any other team that wants a Dendro character and a healer. Our next 5-star is not a support, but an on-field DPS carry that is feared far and wide in Sumeru despite his small stature and shoeless feet. A little known fact about Cyno, his absolute favorite time on a clock is 6:30, hands down. Cyno is an on-field damage dealer that uses his elemental burst to don some sacred jackal armor, changing his attacks to fast claw swipes and infusing them with electro. While slashing about, every few seconds a purple Yu-Gi-Oh eye will appear on the screen, allowing Cyno's regular skill, a small spear lunge, to be replaced by a much stronger claw slam AoE. Cyno is a pretty simple character overall. Use his skill, use his burst, attack, then use his skill whenever the screen-filling purple eye appears. He wants a lot of field time, and that can be a detriment since there aren't too many characters that can provide him buffs that last long enough. What makes this worse is that if your buffs run out while you're in his burst state, you cannot switch off of him or you will lose your elemental burst. So you can't refresh any team buffs once they expire during his burst state if you want to keep attacking with him. He is also supposed to have some resistance to interruption, but honestly it's basically unnoticeable and he'll still get knocked around a lot. Even though Cyno spends a lot of time on field, he's not really designed to be a hyper carry. He's more designed to be a reaction carry that triggers a lot of aggravate or hyper bloom. His kit also synergizes with him building more elemental mastery than the typical carry, which is an added benefit for aggravate and quick bloom teams. So how does this card-loving, dad joke brandishing purveyor of punishment stack up against the competition? It's time to give Cyno a rating. Cyno's personal damage is good. On his own, his damage may seem a bit lackluster, but when paired with good Dendro off-field characters, he does a lot more damage. He particularly excels when fighting big enemies that don't move around too much, because you get most out of him when you just sit on an enemy and just spam normal attacks. Unfortunately, this is not the typical experience you will have because many times you'll fight multiple enemies and it can be a little bit annoying because his enhanced skill can knock enemies back. When he knocks enemies around, you're going to have to chase them all over the field, and that can be a little bit of a pain. The fact that you sometimes have to cut your rotation short to reapply team buffs is also a bit annoying, or you can choose to play him on field after the buffs expire, but that also dampens his damage potential. Cyno's support capability is bad. He is an on-field damage dealer, and if you don't play him as the active character, then he cannot contribute to the team. Some on-field damage dealers do have off-field support capability, as we'll talk about with Ayato a little bit later, but unfortunately, Cyno does not. Cyno's team flexibility is okay. Cyno does great with Nahida, Dendro Traveler, Baizhu, Fischl, Beidou, Xingqiu, Yelan, Zhongli, and very likely Furina. But then again, so do many other characters. The good news is that if you are a newer player or a free-to-play player, then the Dendro Traveler is a great partner for Cyno. The bad news is that you may find that you want a lot of several limited 5-star characters just to make Cyno's teams better. However, the limited 5 stars you'll want with Cyno are going to be characters like Yelan, Nahida, and Zhongli, which are really useful everywhere else. But this brings up another issue because those characters are really good and they make Cyno really good, but Cyno doesn't actually make any of those characters any better. Cyno is not a bad character, but he's also not the only character that you could run in an Aggravate or Quick Bloom team if you wanted to run a really strong version of those teams. And that's the major downside of Cyno. He's not too hard to replace. As an on-field DPS, he does not contribute to the team if he's not on field, and there are a lot of great Aggravate and Quick Bloom teams out there. He's not a necessity in making those teams function, he's just a character that is nice to have, but not necessary. Cyno's free-to-play friendliness is good. Being able to make good use of the Dendro Traveler is a big advantage for Cyno. Another big advantage is that the White Tassels, a 3-star spear you can get from chests in Leeway and the Chasm, is actually quite good for him. He doesn't mind the low base attack as much as your other average on-field damage dealers would, and he greatly benefits from the crit rate and normal attack damage bonus. He still really wants characters like Xingqiu, Yelan, Nahida, Baizhu, or Zhongli, but it's not too hard to make do with Cyno with just a few characters on your account, even if they aren't his ideal teammates. And even though he is a character that is more replaceable than others, if you do unlock him early and if you don't have a lot of characters, he will be pretty good as he can carry you through the game since everyone has access to the Dendro Traveler and everyone can get the 3-star weapon, the White Tassels, without even having to wish. So early game Aggravate teams with Cyno will be very strong, but he will kind of decrease in value over time as you get more and better characters. Cyno's overall rating is okay. Cyno has the capabilities of being a very strong damage dealer. Unfortunately, so do a lot of other characters. And like many other characters, Cyno can often be replaced with a lot of different characters and substituted in a variety of different ways. He does have some good potential for free-to-play players, but he's the type of character you should only wish for if you really like him and you really like his playstyle. He doesn't enable any special team that you can't already make with other 5 stars and other 4 stars, and that's typical of most carries. But if you do really like him and see yourself playing him a lot, it's not too hard to make a very strong Cyno team, though I would recommend you focus on getting really good support characters like Nahida first, because really strong support characters will end up carrying you more than anything in Genshin Impact. Recommended teammates for Cyno include Baizhu, Nahida, Yao Yao, Dendro Traveler, Yelan, Jingqiu, Fischl, Beidou, Zhongli, and Furina if you have a team-wide healer. Rounding out the upcoming 5 stars is Ayato, the boba-loving head of the Kamisato clan and Sayu's boss. With tons of really good Hydro characters already in existence, is Ayato worth your primogems, or has his value slowly dried up? Ayato is an on-field DPS character that uses his skill to enter a special swing swing state, which allows him to deal Hydro damage in a series of fast anime-like Hydro slashes. You really don't play Ayato as much as you watch him. That's because playing Ayato is honestly just as easy as using his skill and then holding his normal attack button down, and that's it. His burst is also pretty good, and you will want to use it despite the super long animation. But hey, some people will really enjoy the fact that you get to stare into his eyes for several seconds every time you use his elemental burst. The super long burst animation definitely eats into the time of your buffs or other off-field damage sources, and that can be annoying, but it can also prevent you from taking damage from a really strong enemy attack, so there's some advantages and disadvantages. Even though this animation is really long, it does also persist when he switches off-field, meaning that he can use this to apply Hydro even when he is not the active character. That doesn't mean that it's a great idea and that you should use him as some sort of off-field DPS Hydro applicator, but it is still an option. People don't get Ayato for his burst, they get him for his skill so he can enter his enhanced state and use his multitude of fast attacking Hydro slashes. Overall, Ayato is a pretty simple character who is similar to a lot of other characters that get a special elemental infusion stance from their elemental skill, and then just normal attack until that stance is over. But just because Ayato is simple, does not mean he's weak. Ayato's damage is not massive on his individual hits, but he does attack pretty fast, and has some decent AoE capabilities as well. The damage he does can add up quite quickly, especially in AoE situations. One thing to note is that after you use Ayato's skill, he has a little bit of interruption resistance, but it's not very much and you can still easily get knocked around. So how good is Ayato overall? Should he be showered with praise, or will he just rain on your parade? It's time to give Ayato a rating. Ayato's personal damage is good. Ayato's damage numbers may not seem super high compared to the other massive hits of someone like Hu Tao, but he's not weak by any means either. Ayato attacks really fast, and his damage adds up quickly. Because of the size of his attacks and his burst, he excels in AoE, but can sometimes fall short in single target fights. But it's not just his personal damage that makes him good, it's the fact that he can be a good Hydro Elemental driver for a lot of really powerful teams. Ayato's support capability is okay. Ayato's burst does apply Hydro off-field, and it does a decent amount of damage in a pretty good sized AoE. And his burst will do particularly well if you can group enemies for its duration, as the droplets target random enemies, so keeping them clustered tightly together will massively increase his burst output thanks to the small bits of AoE splash damage from his burst's water drops. But without his burst, Ayato's support capabilities are bad, and the real value you get out of him is when you're using him on field. Ayato's team flexibility is great! Ayato has a lot of powerful team options, from Vaporize with Xiangling and Bennett, to several varieties of Electrocharged and Hyperbloom teams, to Burgeon teams with Toma and Dea, and he can even be a hyper carry with a team like Yunjin, Zhongli, and a Vivi Animo support character. Though I personally don't enjoy playing Ayato as much in a hyper carry team as I do when he's the driver for a reaction team. Regardless, there are a lot of different ways to play Ayato, but he does rely on a lot of other really good characters like Nahida, Fischl, Xiangling, and Bennett, or relies on highly invested teams like Yunjin, Zhongli, and an Animo character in his hyper carry teams. The only downside to Ayato's teams is that they can often also be constructed using Jingqiu or Yelan, so he's not a super unique character in that regard. However, this can also be an advantage in the Abyss because you need 2 teams to complete the Abyss, so Ayato can be the Hydro driver for one side, and you can use your Xingqiu or Yulan on the other side. Ayato's free-to-play friendliness is okay. Ayato doesn't really have that many great free-to-play weapon options available. He really appreciates something like the Black Sword, which is a paid Battle Pass weapon, or a premium 5-star limited weapon like his signature Harangapaku Futsu or the Mist Splitter Reforged. His free-to-play team options are also somewhat limited, but he does have access to the Dendro Traveler and Xiangling, and that can help create a free-to-play Burgeon team pretty easily. But the truth is, he really appreciates good support characters to make him shine, especially since his free-to-play weapon choices are not as good as other free-to-play friendly characters. Luckily, he does well with some of the most commonly used characters like Fischl, Bennett, and Nahida, making it so you don't need some weird support to make him work. Ayato's overall rating is good. Ayato is a solid Hydro character that can deal good damage and also be a great Hydro driver in a variety of teams. He's fun and easy to play, but he's also easily replaceable if you already have a character like Xingqiu or Yulan. Ayato's value is therefore pretty high when you don't have a lot of good Hydro characters, but as you get more good Hydro characters, his value decreases, especially if you already have Nuvilit, as he and Ayato share similar roles. So unless you really like Ayato, it may not be worth wishing for him, especially if you have some combination of Xingqiu, Yulan, or Nuvilet. Ayato is far from a bad character, but he's just not quite as valuable as certain 5-star supports like Nahida and Kazuha. Recommended teammates for Ayato include Bennett, Xiangling, Kazuha, Sucrose, Nahida, Toma, Yunjin, Zhongli, Fischl, and Beidou. And with the gradings finished, who should you wish for? Well, this patch we have 2 support characters and 2 on-field damage dealers. Damage dealers help you a lot early in the game, but there are more of them than there are really useful support characters, and as you progress further, your support characters and off-field damage dealers end up being the ones who really carry you through difficult content. My personal ratings for the best picks in patch 4.2 would be Furina at number 1, Baizhu or Ayato at number 2, depending on if you need a healer or on-field damage dealer more, and then Cyno at number 3. Furina is my top pick because she is a support character that also deals off-field damage, in addition to buffing your team's damage, and I think most importantly, she can enable a lot of characters that people don't really use that much anymore or even ever at all, like Jean, Barbara, Sayu, Noelle, and even Mika. That being said, I don't think she's everyone's cup of tea. I personally hate characters that drain their health for damage, but I for some reason enjoy Nuvilet, and I'm excited to see what Furina can do for Noelle. If you really don't like Furina, Baizhu and Ayato are good choices, and Cyno's okay, but if you like Furina's playstyle and are only concerned with getting the best characters on your account, I would recommend not wishing in patch 4.2. The reason is that Raiden and Nahida still need to have reruns, and based on how Hoyo does Archon reruns, we should expect them in patch 4.3 and 4.4. People have told me that they think Raiden will rerun in patch 4.3, but that's all speculation. If it is true, that means Nahida would have a rerun in patch 4.4, and if you can't decide between Furina, Raiden, and Nahida, I would recommend that you look at Furina's playstyle, and if you like it, I recommend wishing for her in patch 4.2. By the time Nahida comes out, you will likely be close to guaranteed to getting her as well, provided she does come in patch 4.4 or later. If you don't like Furina, I recommend skipping and saving your primos for Nahida, because Nahida is really strong and very free-to-play friendly, and she's just such a good support character, she can really improve just about anyone's account. Raiden is of course still great, but I think people will get more value out of Nahida than Raiden in general. Now your specific case may be a bit different, and if you're still unsure about who to wish for, you are more than welcome to come by my Twitch stream and ask who is best for you. You can tell me who you want, who you already have, and I can give you a recommendation on who would be best for you. I stream daily in the mornings Eastern Standard Time, so you can come by and catch me live at twitch.tv/sharkheart. That's Shark H3ART. And who knows, I may start streaming on YouTube so I can see all you lovely people there too. I hope this review has been helpful and clarified the value of certain characters for you. If you're more interested in Ayato or Cyno instead of Baizhu or Furina, don't forget that we will be able to see the patch 4.3 livestream about 10 days into the banner of Phase 2. So if you're kind of on the fence for those characters, you can just wait until the patch 4.3 livestream preview and see if there's characters you want in patch 4.3 more. But it seems like most of the people I talk to are more excited for Furina, and since she is coming on Phase 1 of patch 4.2, we don't get the luxury of seeing which 5 stars are being run or rerun in patch 4.3 before her banner disappears. Whoever you choose, please let me know which characters you're going for, and don't be afraid to stop by on Twitch and ask me for my shark blessing. 50% of the time, it works 100% of the time. I love you, stay jawsome, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.